Hey everybody, welcome back. I wanted to share an amazing story with you that I read about, and really amazing story here. Experienced a lot of emotions reading this book. Fortunately, I don't have the book. Well, it was a book I read like 20 years ago, and just popped in my mind yesterday. I was figuring, I think quite a few people have heard the story. David Pelzer, a child called it, is the abuse that he suffered at the hands of his biological mother. I did a review on this book about Tatum. This is a good book too. Tatum O'Neal, A Paper Life. And she wrote this book, I think about 10, 11 years ago. She's the daughter of Ryan O'Neal. And she suffered a lot of abuse from her father and her father's friend, Ryan O'Neal. And her mother, Jo Moore, who has passed away, or Joanne Moore. I guess she didn't abuse her, but she neglected her. She was an alcoholic and a drug addict. So that was an amazing story, too. So this book I want to talk about is written by David Pelzer, and it's called, he's like a life coach now, does speakings all over the U.S., maybe even out of the country, too. And the first book, it was written, I think, in 95. It was called A Child Called It. I'm going to go over his other books, too, because I read two of his books. Now, this book, A Child Called It, it's about, which I'll talk about in just a couple minutes here. It's about the abuse that he suffered at the hands of his biological mother from the time he was 4 until the time he was 12, when he got rescued by the authorities. And the second book I think he wrote was The Lost Boy, because he ended up going into foster care. And that was like the 6-year period from like when he was 12 to he was like 18. And then the third book he wrote was called A Man Named Dave, and that's when he was 18 and he was out of foster care. He's basically on his own, being an adult. Went into the Navy or the Air Force, I do believe. And then there was another book. I didn't read those two, the second and third. And the fourth one I read was real good. It was called like Help Yourself, and he's fully recovered from his life, the abuse he suffered as a child. He's perfectly normal, perfectly fine, and he's basically just trying to help other people help themselves too. He said, yeah, you might have been exposed to a negative environment, whether it be drugs, just got into the wrong crowd, criminal activity, alcohol, abuse at the hands of your, parents or what have you. And he basically tries to, it was a good book too, talks about trying to help other people recover, maybe let go of the past and live in the present and create a better future, better life for yourself. So, excuse me, clogged up here. Sorry. So yeah, this was a great book. It's probably one of the best books I ever read, even though it was absolutely, I experienced a lot of emotions reading this book. I was angry at times, depressed, terrified, scared, upset. I just thinking about it makes me cry a little bit. And I, still tend to live in the past. I still have some anger, depression from the way I get treated on jobs by bosses, coworkers, high school bullies, junior high bullies, bad teachers I had. It's all there. And I'm thinking about getting therapy myself, but I will tell you, I don't know, I can't speak for you, but after reading this book, I told myself, like, oh my God, like I really, even though I do complain about my past after I read that book 20 years ago, is that I really have no right to bitch or complain about my past, because what this guy, David Pelzer, went through is just absolutely, it's amazing. He turned out to be normal. Even some professionals had predicted that he was either going to end up in jail or he was going to end up committing suicide or going like schizophrenic. None of that happened. He turned out to be completely normal. So who knows if he was abused before the age of 4. But anyways, his mom was a stay-at-home mom. He was the oldest, David Pelzer. Again, this book is called A Child Called It. That's what his mother actually ended up calling him. The abuse just got worse and worse over time. And this is the abuse that he remembers from the time he was 4 till the time that he was 12, that he was rescued by authorities. And I guess his mother, this is his biological mother, and she, I guess, was abused by her mother. And he talks about, from the time that he remembers, as far back as he could remember, he said before all his abuse started, he said he loved his mother. He said she was like the greatest person, the greatest, that would do anything for her children, that would do anything for her husband, the greatest wife, the greatest mother, the greatest cook in the world. He said she would just give you the shirt off her back. And for some reason, she started drinking. I guess like she just snapped, started. She just went like mad. I guess he doesn't really know because she never got professional help. But she started drinking. I guess she started having issues with the abuse that she suffered at the hands of her biological mother, and she didn't take it out. She never abused the three brothers. He was the oldest, and he doesn't know why. I guess like when he got therapy, they call it like target selection, target child selection. I guess he was very quiet. I mean, I got picked on. Like I said, I could never figure it out because I was always the biggest person in my class. But it's like, I couldn't understand that. Like, why were these bullies picking on me when I was such a big kid? I wasn't very tough, but still, physically, I probably could have beat these kids' asses. But I was quiet, so I think I got picked on for that. And I did have a speech impediment, which I overcame. And I had a learning disability, which I overcame. I mean, I guess you don't like, get rid of it, but you work around it. I pretty much have worked around it. I had learned, a processing problem, which I guess I still do, but I've overcome it. That's kind of hard when you look at me today. And he doesn't really know exactly why he never really got an answer from her, but he doesn't really know exactly why she targeted him. But I guess like the professional help that he did get, that's what they described it as. I guess it wasn't until he got rescued then, when he was out of the household, then I guess she started picking and abusing the other three kids. Nowadays, they would have taken all the kids away from the home. So he had a father, but I guess his father worked all the time. Like, this is back in the days when, like, there were a lot of women working in the labor force because the men, and it was like that when I was a kid back in the 80s. Like, all the moms, like, in the neighborhood, all the moms stayed home. None of the moms worked because back then the men made so much more money that the women, like, didn't have to work, but now the playing field with pay for women and men it's still, I think men are still ahead in salaries and average salary hourly wage, but it's more leveled now. There's a lot more women in the workforce. So his dad was a firefighter, like a fire chief, I think, and he was working a lot. He was like hardly ever home. So like his father, when this abuse first started happening, the mother went mad. The father didn't know what was going on, and then like when he did find out, it was just he couldn't stop it, or chose not to stop it because it was just so out of control. And I have no respect for the mother, and I really have no respect for the father either. He kind of allowed this abuse to go on. He was scared of her. He was definitely scared of her, which I do understand that, but it's like, it's one thing, like if you want to be scared, allow yourself to be abused by like your wife, in this case, but it's like, fuck you, you don't allow. It's one thing if you're scared, but you don't put your children, especially this guy, like it's amazing. He didn't die with what he went through. You do not, like if my wife abused me and, that'd be one thing, but it's like, you are not. If I want to be a pussy and let her abuse me, that'd be one thing, but I would not allow her to abuse my daughter. That is a big, big no. And it's like the father made enough money, he could have taken the kids, packed them up. He wasn't staying with the mother for financial reasons. So I really have no respect for the father for allowing this abuse to go on. So I'll talk about the abuse he went through. Now, I read this book like 20 years ago, but I still have a vivid memory of a lot of the things. I don't remember every single detail, but he did get starved at one point for like 10 days. I know when he got rescued by authorities, he was like 12 years old. And I don't know how tall he was, but he was only like 65 or 70 pounds. He was like really unhealthy weight. He was like a Holocaust. He was like anorexic looking, and not by choice. The mother, she started calling him like the boy. His name was Dave, but instead of all of a sudden when she started abusing him, she called him the boy, and then she called him it. she basically tried to mentally brainwash him, which did work a little bit. But like one, she punished him for something, and one time like she made him look in the mirror and say like over and over again like I'm a bad boy, I'm a bad boy, I'm nothing, things like that. And then at one point, I guess she actually grabbed his hair, she like slammed his while she was, and she made him talk while he was getting his head slammed. The mirror actually cracked, but she was banging his head up against the mirror as he was made to say like I'm a bad boy, I'm a bad boy. And what happened was, yeah, he lived down in the basement. Like I don't even think he had like a bed to sleep on down there. He was just like sleeping on the steps, sleeping on the floor. Like at one point she starved him for 10 days. She had actually stabbed him, which she claimed was an accident. I believe she did it on purpose, and she didn't give him she didn't take him to see the doctor or anything like that. I guess like he was just common sense. He got infected, and he actually like had to like squeeze like I guess like a boil or an abscess, a pocket of pus formed, and he actually had to squeeze the pus out of his own stomach, and he still has a scar from that to this day. And she claimed that that was an accident, and she said that, if you can, he forgave her for that. I guess he forgave her for everything, but sure, I guess her mindset was like, oh, if you could forgive me for that, you could forgive me for everything else that I did to you. She burned him on the stove. Yeah, she stabbed him. She played this game with him called, she actually named it like the gas chamber game, where she locked him in the bathroom closet, and she mixed, I believe, was it ammonia and Clorox? And I guess when you mix those two together, it is like deadly. Like you could die from breathing the fumes. And he was coughing, couldn't breathe. And in order to like survive, like he had to get down on the floor and just like try to get like fresh air from an air vent. And she made him swallow bleach. That became a daily thing. I mean, I hated school as a kid. I absolutely hated school, mainly because of getting bullied and my speech problem. Having my learning disability. School was not fun for me until I overcame all that. So it was like a treat to go home. Like I couldn't wait to get home and just have an after school snack, play video games, watch cartoons, what have you. But so that's David, because he endured a lot of bullying, because he wasn't allowed to shower, wasn't allowed to wear fresh clothes. His clothes were dirty and torn, like they smelled. They used to call him, like, his last name was Pelzer. They used to call him Pelzer Schmelzer. And I guess, yeah, school was torture for him too. And when he came home, it got to one point where, can you imagine that? Like going home knowing that you're going to have to swallow like a spoonful of bleach every day. And I guess she knew, like, well, I guess her mother did that to her. That's amazing he survived that, but I guess like she knew like the amount that she could give him that wouldn't kill him. And like they do say, I guess he did like try to puke or cough it up. They do say that if you ingest a toxic substance like that, whatever it would be, they say don't induce vomiting, because it burns going down, but it definitely, they say don't induce vomiting because it'll burn coming up. It's amazing like that he didn't cause like permanent damage to his throat or his esophagus. So that was one thing, another thing he had to go through. And the most terrifying, gruesome part of the book, at one point they were on vacation, I think it's some cottage, like some fishing trip, and he was being punished by his mother, and he had his youngest brother was a baby at the time, and because he was punished, I guess the father took his two younger brothers out to fish or whatever. And the baby stayed back home with the mother and David. And I guess his punishment was, I guess his brother had just soiled a diaper with pee and poop. And this was, I gotta warn you, this is gonna be pretty gross for those of you that don't know about it. But I guess she took the soiled diaper with pee and his little brother's pee and poop, and I guess like rubbed it all over his face, shoved it in his mouth. She actually said like, get that shit in your mouth, eat it, and she shoved some of it up his nose. And this was going on, and she made it like, she left it on his face as a punishment. She said don't wash it off. And I guess she saw as the father and the other two younger brothers came home faster than expected, so then she's yelling at him to go wipe that shit off her face, hurry up, or I'm gonna beat you, harder later on. I guess like the father didn't know this abuse was going on at this point, and other things like she made him do, like he wasn't allowed to eat, but yet he had to wash dishes, and if he didn't get the dishes done fast enough, he got punished, beaten. There was like some type of punishment. I know at one point, like she filled up a sink with, I think, like Clorox bleach or whatever, and she made him put his arms in there, like she said, yeah, get your hands in there, and I think it was for like an hour or something like that. I don't know if that was a punishment that took place on a regular basis, but yeah, he said like his skin was like eaten away yet, it was like raw, and I think the water went up to his elbows. That was another thing that she did, and he was like stealing food from like other kids. He was going through like other kids' lunches, lockers. I think at one point he actually snuck off and went to like a supermarket, stole like an apple or something like that. I do remember one particular story where he said that he broke into the cafeteria and he stole some like frozen hot dogs. And he said that he took them into the bathroom and like ran water over them to get them to defrost. And he said as fast as he could, he was like chowing down on these frozen hot dogs. And his mother, really smart, like she could tell when he had eaten. I guess she could tell like he wasn't in agonizing pain. And yes, this is another thing that's pretty gross too. I guess the day that he ate the hot dogs, she could tell that he had eaten. She saw the signs of it. So she made him sit at the table while his little brothers ate. He wasn't allowed to eat. And when his little brothers were gone, she put like a bowl in front of him, and she could tell he'd eaten. She's like induced him to vomit. And I guess he vomited up the frozen hot dogs that he had consumed earlier in the day, and I think she made him, it was like in liquid form at that point, and maybe little chunks. I'm sorry if this is grossing anybody out. I'm really apologize, but I'm just telling what happened here. It's just amazing that a mother could be so cruel to a child like this, especially their own flesh and blood. So yeah, she made him eat his own vomit. She made him stay like outside, I guess just like sitting on a rock at times when it was real cold out. This took place in I think it was the San Francisco area. And at the time, this sounds like one of the most biggest cases of abuse in history that I've ever heard of. But they said, at the time, it was like the biggest, back in the 60s, when he got rescued, I think in 68 or whatever, but they said it was like the biggest child abuse case in the state of California at the time. And I do believe another time she made him eat, I think, like dog shit that had like ants or flies, insects crawling around on it. He said, yeah, everything you could think of. It was done to me. I think at one point she did give him like some pork to eat. He was going to eat it either way. I guess it was spoiled. It had been in the fridge for like 2 weeks. And I guess it was spoiled pork that had been in the fridge for 2 weeks. I guess he didn't know it, and he ended up getting food poisoning from it. And he was out in the garage, like totally naked, no clothes or anything, and he didn't even have access to a towel or toilet paper, and he got the shits. He shit himself, and I think, what did he say? Like, he just got, like, sometimes, like, leftover scraps of fat that even, like, the dogs, scraps of food, even the dogs refused to eat. I think at one point he said, like, there were some scraps of fat from, like, a roast beef or a ham or something like that he ate. And I think there was food that was thrown out that was actually good, but, like, homeless people, if you do what you gotta do, poor people, you do what you gotta do, eating food out of garbage cans that people have thrown out. He started eating food in the garage that was his like little brothers had thrown out in the garbage cans, but then I guess she caught on that he was doing that. So I think she poured like some type of, was it powdered ammonia into the garbage cans. That way, like if he ate the food, he would get poisoned. And the teachers did notice, and this is an amazing thing, like nowadays, like my brother's a teacher, and if he sees like marks, like bruises, cuts, visible on like the arms, the legs, the face, the neck, what have you, he has to question it, and he has to report it. Like if he suspects abuse is going on, like even if a child says, oh no, nobody hurt me on purpose, it was an accident, he has to report it to the principal, and I guess like the principal might have to get DCFS involved. You could actually lose your job as a teacher now if you suspect that abuse is going on and you just pass it by. You say, oh, what the fuck? Not my problem. But back in these days, I guess like the teachers, I guess the teacher suspected he was getting abused, but like back in those days, I guess like the teachers, he said that, back in those days, people just like were hush hush. They minded the neighbors, the teachers, the principals. They just minded their own business. People just kept to themselves. They didn't get involved. And it said that the principal and a few teachers, they knew the abuse was going on. After a while, they weren't stupid. And it said that they actually put their lives, I don't think anybody got fired, but he said that they actually put their jobs on the line for this poor child. Because I think the mother said, like, oh, he's jealous, he's got 3 brothers, and he's jealous of them at times. So she actually said that he was inflicting the injuries on himself, that he was punching himself, scratching himself, and I'm not sure how long after a while, they just didn't believe it anymore, if they ever believed it. So, that was when the child, I don't know what was around back then, but yeah, he got rescued by the police when he was 12, and his brothers, I guess, then she started abusing the brothers too, the 3 brothers. Nowadays, they would have removed all the kids, and I'm trying to think of what happened. But yeah, he was in foster care. Oh, that's what happened. The mother, I don't feel sorry for her. I don't wish cancer on anybody. But yeah, this mother, I guess I think she died when he was in his 30s. I think in 1991 she died, like 25 years after this rescue. But yeah, she never apologized to him. It sounded like she manufactured a lot of shit in her own head, that he was, misbehaving. And it sounded like the grandmother, I think the grandmother outlived the mother, but yeah, she was still claiming, even after this book was written, she was claiming that he was a little shit, that he deserved these punishments. And this guy, David, said he was never doing any of it, whether it be walking on like a neighbor's lawn, walking on the neighbor's grass. He was always getting punished for these things that he was never doing. And one of the brothers actually turned, like I said, a lot of the stuff was going on when the father wasn't home, when the brothers weren't home. I guess one of the brothers is like saying that like a lot of the stuff is bullshit, that he's exaggerating, it wasn't as bad as he is making it out to be. It's like, well, like it doesn't sound like the brothers and the father witnessed all the abuse that happened. And it's like, until you go through something like that yourself, it's like, shut the fuck up, fuck you. You don't know what other people are feeling. You don't know what other people are feeling until you go through that yourself. So he's got no right to say that. I don't know what the brother's motives are. I don't know. This was years ago. I don't know if he ever came to his senses. But yeah, he saw his mother, I guess, before she was dying. He thought maybe that he would get an apology, that he would get, an I love you. But he said, yeah, that even as an adult, he said he just wanted, his mother she was dying of cancer, and she still had anger at her mother for the abuse that she suffered. But he said, yeah, he's like, I wanted to beat my mother. I wanted to kill my mother. He said, it took every ounce of anger. He said, I wanted to kill her. He said, it took every bit of, anger that I had. I had to like put it all away. I had to take like everything I had, not to kill her, not to, smack her upside the head. And yeah, she was still being a bitch, saying that he was misbehaving, which he wasn't. But it's not like she still had, anger towards her mother, saying like, oh, I showed her, she didn't, I think he did tell her that too. She's like, yeah, I showed her, I didn't let her kill me, she didn't kill me. And he said the same thing to his mother. He's like, well, regardless of what you did, I grew up to be, got out of the Air Force, the Navy, whatever. He said, I grew up, a good father, good husband. I got children of my own that I treat very well. I never turned out to be an abuser, never committed suicide, never ended up in jail, never got arrested. He's like, regardless of what you did, how much you hated me, he said, you didn't kill me. And it's not like she wanted him dead. He actually asked her, he's like, mother, I'm really surprised. you didn't kill me. He was like, you hated me so much. It almost seemed like you wanted me dead, didn't you? And she said, oh yeah, I did want you dead. I wish you were never born. And he said, okay, so, why didn't you just kill me? Why didn't you just kill me then? And she's like, oh, I wanted to, but I always thought to myself, what would I do with the body? It's like, whoa. So that's like the only reason. That's the only thing that kept you from killing your own son. Absolutely amazing. But yeah, that's amazing. I would be so angry at my mother for that. I guess he describes two different people. He was on Larry King, and he loves his mother. If I ever met, like, a lot of people apologize that meet this guy, David Pelzer, they apologize to him. They're usually in tears. They hug him. I do the same thing too. If I met him, I'd probably be speechless. I would probably hug him, start, crying, saying that I'm sorry that you had to go through all that. I am so sorry. I have no right to complain about my life. But he always tells people, it's amazing. He always tells people, don't be. He said it made me a stronger person. It made me the person I am today. And I'm able, because of that, my childhood, I'm able to help other people. He said if he could do it all over again, if he could have it, his choice to live, another life, he said, no, I wouldn't have it any other way. There's nothing that I would change about my past. I'm like, whoa, that really takes some strength and courage. And, I don't think that I could do that. And Larry King did ask him, he's like, so David, he's like, I got to ask you, he's like, you love your mother? And he kind of talks about it in two different senses. He's like, well, you know what? He said, I love her. He said, when she was abusive, I really hate her for that. I hate that part of my mother. But he says, I love when I think about her, I think about the person she was before she turned mad. He said, the greatest, cook in the world, the greatest mother, the greatest husband, somebody who would do anything for her family, anything for her husband, anything for her kids, neighbors, friends. It would just give you the shirt off her back. So he's like, yeah, I love her for the person that she was before she turned mad. And what an inspiration he is. What an inspiring story. I still harbor lesions from my past. I wish I had the strength that he does. Maybe I will someday, but I don't, I really don't think so. But yeah, I definitely recommend. I don't know if they ever made a movie. They were talking about making a movie about this called the David Pelzer story. I don't know if they ever did. I don't know if it was like just talk or if it's still in the works. But yeah, that would definitely be a good movie to see. I imagine it would be hard to watch. But yeah, I definitely would do it. But yeah, I'm not very much of a reader, but yeah, I definitely recommend, like, if you are harboring lesion scars, just feel it won't fade from your past, it will never fade, never get over things. I definitely recommend this. I think it will definitely help you with your life a little bit. It definitely helped me. It took me a while to get this off of my mind, just what he went through. I experienced, like, it was almost like a horror movie. It's like on the edge of your seat, like when you just know something's about to happen, it's totally quiet, you just know the killer is going to come out, the volume, music is going to come up, and somebody's going to get hurt or killed. That's it was kind of like, God, like, what's going to happen next? It was so terrified. It's like I could not put the book down. It took me probably about a month to finish it, but man, it was, I was working a lot of hours at the time. Didn't really have a whole lot of time to rereading, but I spent like a lot of my spare time reading this book. But yeah, I definitely recommend it. And he said he took, well, that's what I wanted to say. I couldn't find the word before, but he said, yeah, what I wanted to say was when he actually met with his mother when he was an adult, it took every bit of strength that he had not to kill, beat the death out of his mother. And yet it's amazing that she was dying, and yet she still couldn't come to terms with what she did to him, that she just couldn't. I know my grandma and grandpa didn't really get along, at least in their later years, but I know my grandma was dying of cancer. She finally made peace with my grandpa. Actually, my grandpa had a lot of anger towards her, but when she was dying, I remember it brought tears to my eyes. I remember when right before she died, he was petting her hair, and he said, I love you, Harriet, that was her name, and she said, "I love you too, Edward," which was his name, and it actually brought tears to my eyes. I remember telling my wife, I said, "Hey, I should hope they find some peace, make some peace before my grandma goes," when she was terminal, and they did, and that makes me really happy. I don't know what it was, but I don't know if it was always like that, but because I mean, I wasn't born until my grandma and grandpa were in their 60s, but they really didn't do a lot together. They were always fighting, and grandpa stayed home a lot. My grandma was always kind of out of the house. They really led separate lives. They lived in separate rooms, at least their later years. I felt kind of bad. I think deep down they did love each other, but yeah, even when my grandpa was in his 90s, he was talking about divorcing her. It was kind of funny in a way, but in other ways it wasn't kind of funny because grandpa had trouble hearing from the time I could remember. And I know one Christmas my grandpa couldn't hear something my grandma was saying, and she's like, "Oh, for next Christmas I'm going to get you a hearing aid." And he's like, "Oh yeah, don't worry about it." It was kind of funny in a way. Like one time he said, like, "Oh, don't worry about it, I'll be dead by next Christmas." He used to say that. He said that once. And then one time he said, "Oh, don't worry, I'm just going to commit suicide." And then like another time he said, like, "Oh, don't worry, I'm going to divorce you." And they're both in their 90s. Like, oh God. It was kind of funny in a way, but in other ways it wasn't funny. So yeah, that's all I have on that. Yeah, definitely check it out. There's other books too. Yeah, David Pelzer, A Child Called It. That's the book where he talked about his abuse from 4 to 12. I didn't read A Man Named Dave, and I didn't read The Lost Boy. I also read his other book called Help Yourself. And he might have written, those are the 4 that I know about. He might have written more. Help Yourself was the 4th book he wrote, and he's probably written more. I just don't know about yet. I'll have to check into that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope this was helpful to you. Sorry about the gross parts, but I just tell it like it is. And yeah, I hope that you, if for those of you that are having trouble with your past, like I am, definitely read this book. I think it'll help you. I think it'll help you. Please just give it a try. Give it a try. I think it'll help. Okay? Please do it. Do it for you, and do it for me. But more importantly, do it for you. Do it for you. That'll make me happy. That'll make me happy. I not really a religious person, but for those of you out there that are currently struggling with their past, whatever it may be, my prayers are with you. I'm praying for you right now that you find peace in your life, that you read this book, and get help. In other ways too, if you want. So yeah, I'm praying for you in God's name, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. From me to you. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Have a great week, and have a great weekend coming up. I really care about my 43 subscribers and anybody else that will come along in the meantime and don't want to subscribe. That's fine. Just anybody who's viewing this, I love you too. I wish you all the happiness, joy, and peace in your life. Once again, have a great day, rest of your week, everybody, and I'll see you all real soon with another great video. Peace. I am out.